Book 1, Law of Salimi, Chapter 49, Curse of Level 2 Abilities. My Level 1 ability to change intense emotion into selective permanent memory has a Level 2 ability of changing my selective memory into predicting future events. In addition, my Level 1 ability of changing anything that I can observe and analyze into actual theory, it evolved into the Level 2 where my developed theory can be changed into actual practice. In effect, the second ability allowed me to do virtually anything provided I could convince myself that the developed theory was real and believable. While it seemed to be very easy to do, in reality it was very difficult because I do not believe anything without proof and evidence. Thus, the second ability has rather a huge obstacle when I wish to apply them to myself. On the other hand, this second ability was easily implemented upon another human being. The quintessential example of this was how I could make my students to believe in themselves and became the best students at the private college. Moreover, at the university, I implemented the same ability which had successfully helped many students that I tutored for 2 semesters. I believe that this ability was meant to be used for others to help other people. I could implement it to myself, but it would require a huge amount of effort and focus, which was a heavy price to pay. While having these 2 abilities have been explained throughout this book in much details, I have been focusing on the positive sides of the story in my life. In reality, everything in life had 2 sides of the coin or 2 dimensions of perspective. Hence, these abilities had a negative effect that I had first-hand experienced in my life. At level 1, my selective ability allowed me to remember virtually permanent events, but it also had a negative impact of permanent recreation of negative events, which I had explored in the last chapter about Respondent 004. It was like a horror movie that was replaying in my mind every time I heard about triggering key such as my PhD program. Don't get me wrong here, I am not complaining about the negative effects of my abilities, but rather highlighting the true nature of real life experience because everything had good and bad sides to it. For my second ability to observe, analyze and theorize, it helped me to develop probably thousands of theories throughout my life. The bad sides of it was the fact that it became automatic, where everything that I had seen in my life will be automatically analyzed and theorized, and theories would be developed, which meant that I had virtually no control to actually switch this ability off. As a result, everything that I see, whether on television, actual events, or behavior of others, would be triggering automatic theoretical development. When I see people walking, I had theories developing all the time. In order to dampen its effect, I always wore headphones or earphones listening to Japanese songs that I could not understood with 100% because it removed my hearing abilities that might augmented further development of theories. Even going to post office could trigger numerous theories if I do not wear my earphones and listen to songs. The bad sides of this was simply extremely tiring. While I had a tremendous mental endurance capability, it was very tiring for me because I could not control the automatic theoretical development. With the established level 2 of predicting future events, it provided even worse negative impacts. For example, I cannot do certain things when I had already seen in my mind how the event would have ended, which explained how I would never teach students in a tuition fall in love with certain individual who had shown her interest with me, and numerous other things. It might even be possible to state here that I might have ended my employment because I had seen where it had led me. Moreover, there were various jobs that I can't even try considering I could not even try, considering I knew how and where it would have led me. In fact, if I do not experience this negative impact, impacts in my life, it would be entirely possible for me to be extremely rich if I pursue the path of becoming a multimillionaire. Furthermore, my second level 2 ability of changing developed theories into actual practice had left me behaving like a lunatic, which could easily be agreeable to most people who knew me and my almost psychotic behavior. If you could see my working environment at home, you could find about 5 huge whiteboards which I had to write my theories on. In fact, my choice to write books about my life would also revolve around this situation where I had too much theories in my head, which I needed to share out or put into another medium that would be out of my head. It would be absolutely non-exaggeration to state here that while writing this book, I had at least around 100 new ideas for new books, which I truly intended to write in my lifetime, hopefully with the will of Allah the All-Knowing. I do not wish to write in order to make money, but simply to ease the suffering of negative impacts that came from the level 2 abilities. One of the biggest setbacks of both abilities, which would be the greatest asset, was the hunger and thirst for knowledge. For your information, I had spent about 10 days between chapter 48 and this chapter 49 because of this thirst. It was not due to a writer's block, but rather I had found a new puzzle or problem which I needed to solve in the form of a video game. At the moment, I am doing my best to stop from solving that puzzle, but put my focus on completing this book, which had experienced a 10 days halt due to my desire to solve that puzzle. It was almost like an addiction to me, which I had to struggle in my life in order for me to gain control over it. While the abilities had made me the way I am right now, I also acknowledge the fact that it came with huge burden for me to bear in my life. At this very moment, many do not consider my lifestyle and choices that I had made throughout my life to be categorized as normal human being. I do not claim myself to be special, extraordinary, or even extraterrestrial. However, I could not bring myself to honestly claim that I am normal either. Nonetheless, I see everything that had happened to me in my life as part of the plan that had been written as my fate and destiny by Allah the Almighty. I accepted the fact that I am grateful to everything that had been given to me until this very moment. In my most humblest and honest opinion, it made me very different from others. It made me unique. These abilities were blessings and curses to my life. I love them and hate them at the same time. However, I had no regrets about everything that had happened to me because I felt that I am currently walking the right path that was intended for my life. I am grateful to Allah the Merciful. Can you imagine experiencing to see formulas and theories appearing in the thin air around everything that you see in your sight for every seconds of your life? That was extremely tiring, especially when I do not have full control over it, or even the ability to switch it off when I wished for. While I had been focusing on wallowing over its negative impacts over my life, can you imagine how much knowledge that can be developed through these abilities? I might not be a true genius in the Western perspective sense of the word, but I do realize that I had to utilize these tedious abilities to gain as much knowledge as possible and share them with everyone through writing books. This rationalization would help to justify the reason for me to write my book, which I intended to write as much as I could before I had reached the end of my life. The reason that this book was written about my true life story was simply intended to explain my life experiences and my perspectives about everything. I hope to write about my thesis in the form of science fictions as well as science fiction what had been done by numerous great science fiction writers such as H.G. Wells, Mary Shelley, where they question about the real life concept through the medium of science fiction books. I had researched and observed their writing, which had led me to several theories. What are those theories? They had to simply wait in my next book, which I intended to write as soon as I finished writing this one. Essentially, I believed that I had discovered certain patterns and concepts about their writing which I might be able to develop my own style of writing. If you had read this book until this very chapter, I am absolutely certain that you would never have read this type of books about real life experiences where I am constantly asking you, the reader, questions as if I am directly talking to you. Consider this. I had spent the last 10 years of my life with thousands of hours watching documentaries across various fields of knowledge, which allowed me to develop thousands of theories about everything that I saw. In example, I could explain what happened from the perspective of science on the belief that this world would end at 2012 based on the Mayan calendar theory. I also could explore its origin and historical background which started the theory. It is possible to point out what went wrong and how the theory was established, as well as how this society reacted to the point that we had passed the date of Mayan end of day theory. Considering that I had thousands of theories in my mind, I had begun to control my speech from saying certain things in order to avoid from harming others around me. In effect, I had developed a limiter or some sort of barrier which I had to rethink about my speech that might come out of my mouth. However, when I wrote something, there was no barrier or limiter preventing or slowing my thoughts to be conveyed as I had originally intended. Hence, I tried my best to avoid from using any editing services for this book so that you can read my thoughts as if you are in my mind. Besides writing, I also observe and analyze music, movies, anime, comics, human behaviors, decision makings, and virtually everything that I could see in my life. I had theorized numerous concepts which might explain what would be considered as very desirable to the masses public in each of those mediums. Notwithstanding, I do not implement every one of those theories because it might be used to manipulate or exert control over others if I had abused them. Luckily, I had the teachings of Islam and guidance of Allah the All-Knowing, where I implemented Islam as a way of life. As a result, I do not harm others as much as I possibly could. There had been many cases in my life where I had to pretend that I do not know anything about something or even shun myself from delivering the death blow upon others in order to avoid harming them or simply destroying their lives or careers. In one example, during my employment at the private college Ampang branch, my lecturers, including me, were required to attend and prepare final examination questions as well as to check all submissions from every branches all over Malaysia. It was held at the main campus of the private college, which was in Shah Alam. During the briefing session in the main hall, all of the lecturers who attended was addressed by this particular individual who seemed to have a high status or of ranking in the employment of the private college. While addressing the huge crowd of lecturers in the hall, he started to focus on me specifically about my songkok that I wore. He began to angrily and harshly attack me with his words in front of the huge crowds of lecturers that came from every branches from all over Malaysia. I heard everything that he said and had prepared a great response for him, considering what he did was trying to humiliate me, which was against the teachings of Islam. However, I realized that if I responded to him, which might humiliate him in front of the huge crowd, would harm his career and would be disrespectful to him. I also realized that it was against the teachings of Islam to harm others regardless of their behaviors and actions that does not adhere to the teachings of Islam in the first place. Hence, I just listened to him scolding me and pretended that I did not hear any words that he was shouting in the hall. I acted as if I do not know what he was talking about and just kept silent. To him and everyone else who saw the whole thing, I had conceded the fight and unable to respond to his accusations. In fact, to me and Allah, the All-Knowing, I had just spared him from a devastating death blow because I had chose to follow the teachings of Islam, which do not allow me to harm or humiliate him. Remember the movie Fearless, where Jet Li spared his enemy from delivering the death blow? So I pretended that I did not know what he was babbling about and silently smiling. When the next year came and we had gathered on the same event again, he began to start another attack to me, which was almost similar to the previous year. So I stood up from my seat and walked slowly and tactfully towards him. While we were outside of the main attention or focus of the crowd, I told him that he should speak to the principal of Ampang branch about the matter. If he was not satisfied, he should consult further with the CEO of the private college about the issue of my songkok. What I did was to address the problem while not humiliating him in front of the crowd, which was in accordance to the teachings of Islam. Furthermore, no one heard about our private discussion, which does not harm towards him. In my life, if my life was a movie scene, I delivered him the 5-point palm exploding heart technique, which was developed by Pai Mei, portrayed by Gordon Liu in the movie by Quentin Tarantino titled as Kill Bill Volume 2. As a result, I killed his argument from the point onward, and from the point onward, he had never raised any issue with me ever again. The paramount aspect of the event was to avoid from harming others, especially in front of huge crowd that might cause humiliations and irreparable harm to the life of others. The teachings of Islam and Allah the Almighty guided me in my life to be a good Muslim to everyone around me. In conclusion, with great power come great responsibilities. I am grateful with everything that I had in my life. I accepted the blessings and curses that came with my abilities, even though it made me odd and weird from other normal human beings. I had to pretend numerous times in my life in order to protect others, even though I might be perceived as stupid or conceding in a fight. The truth is, I believe in the teachings of Islam will guide me towards my peace and serenity. It was backed by what Bruce Lee once said: the best fighting style is the art of not fighting. I had seen numerous great scholars in my life to have mastered this ability of fighting by not fighting. It was extremely beautiful, making water to flow with my eyes with awe. With that, we end this chapter and hope to see you again in the future one. Thank you for listening and see you soon.